So, Congressman Owens, let me ask you, first of all, why it was that you decided to go into the House of Representatives as a Democrat in the 80s when Ronald Reagan was the president.
Well, I was a member of the state senate. I'd been there for 8 years, and I'm going to tell you the truth. I was elected to the state senate without the support of the local Brooklyn Democratic machine, and they were determined to get me for the whole 8 years I was there. Every election time I had competition, and I was able to defeat the competition that they were able to finance against me. So they decided when reapportionment took place and they were redrawing the lines, they put a pin in the middle of my district, and my district became 1/4 of 4 other districts. It was distributed that way, and I looked at it and I said, I can never win re-election in this Senate district. And I'd been toying with the idea of running for Congress, but that made it decisive. I said, I may lose, but the noble thing to do now is to run for Congress, to attack instead of retreating. So against everybody's, surprising everybody, I was able to beat an opponent who had $400,000 in the bank when I had $10,000 in the bank, and who had the support of the whole county machine, et cetera, et cetera. So I ran for Congress and I won.
When you came to Washington, a very different place than Albany, New York, what was it like for you when you first came to the House? And if you can remember, who was especially nice to you? And if you'd like to tell us, who was not?
Oh, most of the Democrats were the grand old Democrats were still here. You know, Tip O'Neill, Tom Foley, Mr. Wright, Mr. Natcher, who never missed a vote. So you had that old tradition coming at us at the orientation sessions, and the advice, you know, just you're not to be heard, just not to be seen, to be heard. Your first 2 years, just stay around and learn the ropes, take care of your district, and don't get out of hand, you know, and be a good guy. Of course, not only myself, but most of my class didn't buy that. And we immediately started doing things that upset a few people. But they were nice people. Tip O'Neill, you know, in grand old tradition of the traditions of the House, and you know, protocol was very important. And on the Republican side, there were gentlemen's agreements that you acted a certain way, and it was a nice civil atmosphere at that time.
Now, Ronald Reagan was the president, and obviously you were a liberal activist from day one and remained so all of your career. What was the dynamic at that time between the liberal Democrats and President Reagan? Because certainly partisan competition battles, disagreements today are very tense and angry. How would you describe the battles, which were for very big issues in those days, between the liberal Democrats and Ronald Reagan, who was the leader of a growing conservative movement in the country?
Well, fortunately, there were a lot of Democrats. You know, we had a 40-member, I think, majority over the Republicans. So there was a lot of contention between liberal Democrats and conservative Democrats, as well as Republicans and Democrats. And Ronald Reagan was a major point of contention with the liberal Democrats. I came here out of, as I said before, I was in the community action program in New York City, a part of Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs, Medicare, Medicaid, he started, et cetera, to Ronald Reagan, who was making speeches about people are homeless is because they want to live that way, you know, and being very nonchalant, careless about the people at the very bottom. He didn't care for them. He also got elected, not got elected, he launched his campaign in Philadelphia, Mississippi, appealing to the Southern vote in a rather racist way, I thought. So he was not a favorite president of mine. His manner and so forth was always gracious, et cetera, and charming, et cetera, but I thought he was real cold-blooded and unconcerned about the people on the bottom that I represented most. So we had a problem. I had a problem with Ronald Reagan, and the liberal Democrats had a problem with Ronald Reagan. Not only in domestic matters, but later on, the biggest conflict was with foreign policy, El Salvador, you know, and Nicaragua, the Contra mess that they insisted on continuing the war, and finally the Congress voted to cut off funds for the war in Nicaragua, and so they went to the Iran gate, you know, and they got away with it. You know, they really didn't. It was exposed, but they got away with it. But so Ronald Reagan, you know, he was everybody's sort of liked him, but I thought he was poison for the country.
Do you remember any personal encounters that you had yourself with various presidents over the time that you served? Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, President Clinton, George W. Bush. Any particular encounters that you might have had with any of those presidents that stick in your memory?
I don't remember getting close to Ronald Reagan except in a couple of receptions where I happened to be on one side of the room and he was on the other side of the room. We never really interacted with Ronald Reagan. Daddy Bush, George H. Bush, was very different. He actually reached out to the Congressional Black Caucus and was willing to meet with us on a couple of occasions, and invited us informally to the White House once for a reception, and he was interested in that kind of contact, a different kind of individual. But still, it was sort of distant, and the real interaction came when Bill Clinton became president. We had a tremendous interaction, of course, with all Democrats, and there were a couple of crises that occurred, which the Congressional Black Caucus and myself were right in the middle of. Haiti was, I became the chairman of the task force on Haiti for the Congressional Black Caucus because I had the most Haitians in my congressional district, and that back and forth with Bill Clinton was very dramatic, very up close. He was calling me on my car phone, and you know, it was unforgettable, you know, the experience of him, and he finally came out the right way. He did what I asked him to do. He did what we had asked him to do. He escorted President Aristide, who had been overthrown in a coup. We had a military group that escorted him back to his country without a single American soldier being killed, which is what I told the president in the first place. I said, they would not have, if you take him back, you will not have any opposition. The people who overthrew him are cowards. They will disappear in the bush. They will not fight, and they didn't. But that was a great experience. And later on, we had a number of different meetings with Clinton, the Congressional Black Caucus, about other things, the community technology centers that I proposed as part of the education committee to get over the lack of computers in poor communities. He supported. Later on, even in his last year, he did the unthinkable. He went against his Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Education, Riley, and supported one of my efforts to get school repair and school construction money. Riley had taken the position that the federal government should not get involved, and I fought him for a whole 8 years. And finally, at the last meeting that the Congressional Black Caucus had with Clinton, he promised he would put money in the budget, and he did put $1.2 billion in the budget for school repair and school construction. So my experiences with Clinton were really fantastic.
And this President Bush?
This President Bush is very interesting. He's a, you know, I met him several times. He made an effort to make sure that he made contact with the members of the Congressional Black Caucus and members in general, and New York delegation, and you know, right away, you know, there's a buddy-buddy sort of thing that he'll pull on you that disarms you. You know, I'll never forget. I've been around here for a long, long time, and a lot of Democrats and other people confuse me with John Lewis. You know, John Lewis is almost as handsome as I am, but not quite. And he had no confusion. I saw him the second time, unfortunately, when he visited New York after 9/11. And there's a whole row of congressmen. He comes right down the line and says, "Hi, Mage." How are you? He's a very disarming guy. It's hard not to like him up front, personally. And on a couple other occasions, you know, he will make a beeline for you and make that on direct approach to, "Hi, buddy," you know. So, but in the final analysis, his policies and his the people who surround him, you know, have been terrible for the country. And I don't really want to go to his Christmas parties or anything else and have to confront that friendly attitude in view of the fact that there's so many things that are going wrong, and so many ways in which we're wasting our resources in Iraq while we are refusing to deal with basic problems here. In terms of, he never did fund No Child Left Behind the way he promised to. I am on the Education Committee. We had some close negotiations with the Republicans, including one meeting with him, and he promised that he was going to put billions of dollars in there to make the thing work, and he backed away from that promise in less than a year. So I have many grievances against George W. Bush.
But he's hard not to like.
But you don't want to get close to him because you'll get sucked in to that personal thing that he pulls.